In December 2023, the political landscape of West Africa was jolted by a significant event: the arrest of 4 French nationals in Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso. These individuals were accused of espionage by the military-led government under Captain Ibrahim Traoré. This incident not only strained the already tenuous relations between France and Burkina Faso, but also highlighted the shifting alliances and geopolitical dynamics in the Sahel region. The detained individuals were identified as agents of France's General Directorate for External Security, DGSE, the nation's foreign intelligence agency. Officially, France maintained that these individuals were IT technicians assigned to the French embassy. However, Burkinabe authorities contested this claim, asserting that they were involved in activities aimed at destabilizing the regime. The arrests came against a backdrop of escalating tensions between the two nations. Since Captain Traoré seized power in a coup in September 2022, Burkina Faso has been distancing itself from its former colonial ruler, France. The junta has expelled French troops, suspended military agreements, and sought new alliances, notably with Russia, to address the country's security challenges. The detention of the French nationals became a focal point of diplomatic contention. Initial negotiations for their release, facilitated by Togolese authorities, reached an impasse. Captain Traoré's government demanded substantial concessions, including financial compensation and the extradition of political opponents residing in France. The French government, led by President Emmanuel Macron, categorically refused these demands, leading to a prolonged stalemate. During their detention, the French nationals were reportedly held under house arrest in separate locations. While they were treated well, the situation remained tense, with a strong security presence surrounding them. The prolonged detention raised concerns within the French intelligence community about the safety of their agents and the broader implications for France's operations in the region. In August 2024, another incident further complicated the situation. Damien L., a former French military officer working as a security consultant for an Australian mining company in Burkina Faso, was arrested in Ouagadougou on visa-related issues. However, Burkina Faso authorities suspected him of espionage due to his communications about the country's security situation. After several days in detention, Damien L. was released and expelled to Paris. This incident underscored the junta's increasing suspicion of French nationals and its broader anti-French stance. The diplomatic impasse persisted until December 2024, when a breakthrough occurred. Morocco, leveraging its diplomatic channels and aiming to strengthen its ties with both France and Burkina Faso, mediated negotiations between the two nations. The efforts bore fruit, leading to the release of the 4 French nationals after a year in detention. President Macron expressed gratitude to King Mohammed VI of Morocco for his pivotal role in resolving the crisis. This resolution marked a significant moment in the complex relationship between France and Burkina Faso. While the immediate crisis was averted, the underlying tensions remained. Burkina Faso's pivot towards Russia and its expulsion of French diplomats signaled a continued shift away from French influence in the region. The incident also highlighted the challenges France faces in maintaining its strategic interests in West and Central Africa amid changing political dynamics. The arrest and detention of the French nationals in Burkina Faso serve as a case study of the intricate interplay between national sovereignty, intelligence operations, and international diplomacy. It underscores the importance of understanding local contexts and the potential repercussions of foreign involvement in politically sensitive environments. As the Sahel region continues to grapple with security challenges, political instability, and shifting alliances, the international community watches closely. The events in Burkina. The release of the French nationals did not erase the deep mistrust that had taken root between Ouagadougou and Paris. In fact, just days after their release, Captain Ibrahim Traoré addressed the nation in a broadcast that was as defiant as it was strategic. He emphasized that Burkina Faso would no longer be a playground for foreign interest or intelligence games. Without naming France directly, Traoré warned that any attempts to infiltrate or manipulate the internal affairs of Burkina Faso would be met with decisive action. This statement sent a clear message not only to France but to all external actors with vested interests in the region. It solidified Traoré's image domestically as a nationalist leader determined to restore sovereignty and dignity to a nation long entangled in the webs of neo-colonial control. To many Burkinabe citizens, Traoré's stand against foreign espionage resonated as a patriotic act, a bold assertion of independence. The African continent watched closely. Across social media and in political discourse from Bamako to Kinshasa, Captain Traoré began to be hailed as part of a new wave of African leadership, one that was unafraid to confront traditional Western powers and forge independent paths for security and development. This shift was underscored by Burkina Faso's growing alignment with the Russian Federation, with whom new security and resource agreements were signed during the spy standoff. French intelligence agencies, meanwhile, were reportedly alarmed by the increasing operational risks in the Sahel. The region had once served as a critical area for France's counter-terrorism efforts under Operation Barkhane, but now that operation had been completely dismantled. The loss of influence in Burkina Faso followed similar patterns in Mali and Niger, forming what analysts began to call a Sahelian reversal of French strategic dominance. The incident also forced a reckoning within France's diplomatic community. Inside the Élysée Palace, questions swirled about whether the nation had misread the political winds blowing through West Africa. President Macron's critics seized upon the standoff as evidence that France had lost touch with the realities. On the ground, former diplomats and security analysts gave interviews on national television, warning that without a major overhaul in African policy, France risked becoming irrelevant on the continent it once controlled. Yet for Captain Traoré, the diplomatic victory wasn't just about foreign policy. Domestically, it provided him with a surge in popularity. The junta's grip on power was solidified, with new appointments in the Ministry of Security and Intelligence, reflecting a hardened stance on counterintelligence. Internal reforms were introduced to build Burkina Faso's own surveillance and espionage capabilities, with a focus on training local agents to detect and neutralize foreign plots. And there were whispers, never confirmed but widely believed, of other covert arrests of foreign nationals who had been quietly expelled or detained and interrogated. The streets of Ouagadougou, while calm, were increasingly filled with a sense of watchfulness. Checkpoints grew more frequent, and foreign NGOs reported increased scrutiny. Despite the risks of overreach, Traoré's tactics found favor with a generation disillusioned by decades of foreign intervention and unfulfilled promises. Many saw the spy capture not as an act of aggression, but as a necessary purge, a symbolic and literal removal of outside control. Internationally, the spy scandal also triggered debate within the African Union and ECOWAS. Some member states criticized Burkina Faso's unilateral handling of the situation, while others praised the country for standing up to global powers. The divide highlighted a growing schism within the continent, between those willing to continue working within the frameworks of traditional Western alliances, and those pushing for a breakaway model rooted in sovereign-first politics. Even after the dust settled, speculation lingered around the specifics of the intelligence operations that led to the arrests. According to leaks in regional newspapers, the 4 French nationals were caught while attempting to set up a covert surveillance hub disguised as a data recovery center near the presidential compound. Surveillance footage allegedly showed them planting unregistered communication devices and transmitting data to an off-site server. While France never confirmed the validity of these claims, Burkina Faso presented the evidence to select allies in closed-door intelligence briefings. That leak, whether true or part of a carefully crafted narrative, further inflamed public opinion. Traoré's supporters demanded a purge of all remaining French-linked institutions. Embassies were scaled down, French business contracts were reviewed, and a wave of nationalistic policy swept across government departments. In educational institutions, a new curriculum began to emerge that emphasized African agency, colonial history, and the importance of information sovereignty. Students were taught not only mathematics and language but also counter-disinformation techniques and digital literacy, signs that Burkina Faso intended to prepare a generation resistant to external manipulation. France, meanwhile, was forced to recalibrate its intelligence priorities. Resources were diverted to other strategic zones like North Africa and the Gulf of Guinea, while its footprint in the Sahel continued to shrink. Internal memos from the DGSE reportedly called for a complete overhaul of their presence in West Africa, citing Burkina Faso as a high-risk, high-exposure theater. What started as a covert operation ended up being a turning point, a signal to African leaders, foreign powers, and the global intelligence community that a new era was emerging. In that era, African nations no longer wished to be passive recipients of foreign policy but active architects of their destiny. As for Captain Ibrahim Traoré, his place in African political history was being cemented. Whether seen as a liberator or a provocateur, his actions forced a conversation that had long been avoided. How much control should foreign powers exert in Africa, and at what cost? Even after the spy incident had faded from headlines, its consequences continued to shape the continent. In think tanks from Washington to Brussels, Burkina Faso was now a case study in sovereignty assertion. In cafes in Dakar and Libreville, young Africans debated the legacy of foreign influence and what self-determination truly means in the 21st century. For Traoré, that moment, of capturing foreign spies and refusing to yield, became more than just a tactical victory. It became the story of a man who dared to confront the powerful and reassert the right of a nation to decide its future, on its own terms, with no foreign strings attached. Would you like this formatted into subtitles? Or broken into scenes for voiceover pacing?